Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last day, the third day of our Connecticut's Affordable Housing Conference. We're glad you're joining us. We have some great speakers lined up for this morning and for this afternoon. For those of you joining us for the first time, this conference is hosted by the Partnership for Strong Communities. My name is Kylie Goslin. I'm the Executive Director of the partnership. And the partnership is an organization dedicated to ensuring that everyone in Connecticut has a safe, stable home that is affordable to them in an equitable community of their choice. And over these 3 days, we've been exploring and will continue to explore a variety of topics, all surrounding how we can drive affordable housing policy and programmatic changes to support our state's recovery and close the gap in our housing needs. In a moment, I will be introducing Commissioner Mosquera-Bruno and the CEO of CHFA, Nandini Natarajan. And then directly following that, we're going to have a keynote address from Richard Rothstein, the author of The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America. Please note that there is a separate link to access this event that's different than the rest of the conference. So if you've been participating through your registration links and through Zoom events in the conference up to this point, please note that you do need to use this separate sort of regular old Zoom link for that presentation that you see on the screen. It's also available on our website. And then we'll be closing out the conference today with a full day of sessions on the QAP, the Qualified Allocation Plan, zoning, energy efficiency, accessory dwelling units, and equitable home ownership. Just want to note too that none of this is possible without the support of many sponsors who have helped to make this conference free for all of you to attend today. A big thank you to our leading sponsors and critical partners, the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority and the Melville Charitable Trust. Also to our collaborating sponsors, the Connecticut Department of Housing, Rockport Mortgage, and Webster Bank, and a host of supporting sponsors, including Beacon Communities, Capital for Change, Corporation for Supportive Housing, Elm City Communities, Fairfield County's Community Foundation, Federal Home Loan Bank Boston, JHM Group, List Connecticut, National Equity Fund, and Trinity Financial. So with that, I'm going to move on to our two speakers for this morning before we get to our keynote. And due to some technical challenges, we are deeply apologetic for. The commissioner was unable to join us on Monday at her normally scheduled time. So she'll be speaking, followed by Nandini Natarajan, who I'll introduce shortly. So for many of you, the commissioner needs no introduction, as she's been a member of the Affordable Housing Development in Community in Connecticut here for many years. Prior to her appointment by Governor Ned Lamont, she was the president and CEO of Mutual Housing Association of South Central Connecticut, DBA NeighborWorks, New Horizons. Since joining that in 1994, she served in many different capacities and was ultimately the executive director starting in 2003. And under her leadership, the organization expanded operations beyond New Haven County to New London and Fairfield counties and managed over 100 million in assets. And during her tenure at the Department of Housing, the commissioner has overseen a host of affordable housing programs, as well as a consistent effort to streamline the development process. And most recently, she has helped manage and operate Unite CT, the state's $400 million rental relief program that to date has assisted more than 18,000 households with rental and utility relief during the pandemic. Seila has also helped guide millions in new federal COVID resources aimed at preventing homelessness and assisting those experiencing homelessness exit quickly to permanent housing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the commissioner. Commissioner, welcome. We can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
You're all set.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kylie. It really has been a road to come to this conference. It's just, it has been an experience first with the technical aspect, and then today trying to get to my office, a big accident in 95, I think between 95 and 91. So I had to come back home, and thankfully we were able to get into the conference. But in any way, good morning, everyone. It is really, truly a pleasure for me to be here today. I want to thank the Partnership for Strong Communities for organizing this event. They basically serve as a platform to listen, to share, and to explore ideas to tackle the affordable housing crisis. I don't have to go over that because you all know how difficult it is to access affordable housing in the state. But I hope that through this conference, you all have talked about the challenges, but also you have explored new ideas, build collaborations, and try to leverage resources among each other. And the only way that we're going to be able to get out of the issues that we have and to fill or to close that gap in affordable housing if we all work together and we all work with our resources. Whatever ideas you have, I'm always interested in listening to you guys. So it has been just reflecting on this past almost 3 years since I became the commissioner of the Department of Housing. I cannot think of a better or more significant place to be throughout this pandemic. I have had the opportunity to work with a committee group of people who work long days into the night and even weekends. So allow me to take this opportunity to recognize my staff at the Department of Housing and the staff at Connecticut Housing Finance Authority for the endless hours that they worked to ensure that the financial resources needed to keep people in a safe place were promptly deployed. I also thank all of you for the work you and your staff did to ensure the well-being of countless families and individuals. You know, I'm thinking about quotes. I was looking for something to reflect on all the work that had been done this past 3 years. And I found one from Maya Angelou that says, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So the families that you have helped will never forget how you made them feel and help them through this pandemic. So a little bit about what we have been doing this past year. We received the first allocation of emergency rental assistance. Early this year, we set up Connecticut's Emergency Rental Relief Program, UNICT. Under US Treasury guidelines, we had to pay or commit at least 65% of $235 million we received from the federal government by September 30th. And we have surpassed that benchmark. After starting off a bit slow, we gained momentum, and I'm proud to report that as of this morning, we had approved 26,071 cases, paid out $139 million, and there are another $123 million worth of payments in progress. We have served 5,669 landlords on behalf of tenants. Just recently in October, we were able to deliver $17 million in bulk payments on behalf of customers for electrical utility arrearage. So there is an ongoing robocall also, a campaign to continue to raise awareness about the financial resources that are available through UNICT. But all this success I have to thank everybody for participating on this. We haven't done it alone. Many of you have been helping us. We have also engaged Connecticut Legal Services, Quinnipiac Mediation Clinic, the Judicial Branch, and more than 20 local organizations. And for me, it's due to our collective work. Connecticut is a nationally recognized leader with our response to housing-related issues. Thank you to you all for being part of these efforts. The Department of Housing has also received $125 million to assist homeowners from the Home American Rescue Plan. CHFA will administer the program on behalf of DOH. The program, My Home CT, will be up and running within the next couple of months. And as we continue on the road to recovery, we are also keeping an eye towards the future. Governor Lamont designated construction as an essential business during the height of the pandemic, and my staff continued to produce at a high level thanks to teleworking. So because of that, DOH and CHFA continue the workflow and move projects through the pipeline. During the current calendar year, 1,546 units across 37 developments were completed, representing $71 million in state investment, while leveraging an additional $170 million. Additionally, there are 120 projects under construction that are either preservation, rehabilitation, or new construction. This represents over $1 billion in total investment, with more than $266 million coming from the Department of Housing or state resources. So those are going to be about half of those units will be completed by the end of this coming year. Furthermore, we have been working on our housing plan for next year. I know people are interested in knowing what is next. We're still not of the pandemic. We still have some things that we have to work on, some emergencies that we have to deal with. But the Lamont administration's housing plan will include, so I'm just going to let you pick a little bit into what our plans are for this coming year. So we're working on a plan that will include resources for new developments with emphasis on deeply targeted affordable units, preservation, financial assistance for first-time homeowners, creation of transitional housing for those individuals and families living in shelters, financial support and capacity building for nonprofit affordable housing developers, and financial investment for neighborhood revitalization. So stay tuned, more to come on that. Finally, I look forward to continue working with all of you to address the affordable housing needs in our state. We're lucky to have the leadership of our governor. As you heard him, he believes that everyone should have access to a home, which will provide the opportunity to succeed in life. So I couldn't be in a better place. I couldn't have a better boss, that the governor, to make sure that we address the needs of our citizens. So thank you very much for having me today. And look, as I said before, I'm looking forward to continue the working relationship with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And it has been a partnership over the last couple of years. And thank you for your leadership and responsiveness and willingness to listen and change course frequently, as we all have had to do in the last 18 months. Next, I'm going to introduce Nandini Natarajan. Many of you know her as the CEO of Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. And it's hard to imagine it's been a little more than 2 years since she came on board. During these most challenging times, Nandini has brought a willingness to listen to a wide variety of partners and the flexibility to think broadly about housing in the context of Connecticut's future, while remaining steadfast in her role as a responsible fiscal steward of state and federal resources. She has demonstrated a willingness to review policy and make new changes. So under her leadership, despite the pandemic, she and her amazing staff at CHFA, along with their partners at DOH, have moved forward with funding the rehabilitation and construction of affordable housing units across the state of Connecticut. Nandini comes to CHFA after serving as Chief Financial Officer of the Illinois Housing Development Authority, or IHDA, an organization with an affordable housing mission and structure similar to CHFA. And prior to working at IHDA, Nandini worked as a financial advisor for Kane Mitter and Associates in New York. So, Nandini, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thank you so much, Kylie, for that warm introduction. And thank you all for participating in what has been an illuminating, informative, and inspiring conference. I always enjoy the sessions when I can participate and listen. We are proud to support the creation of spaces like these. They raise awareness of affordable housing issues. They elevate the discourse. They amplify unique and often challenging perspectives. As Kylie said, I just completed my second year here in Connecticut, and I'm already looking forward to what 2022 has to offer in terms of our conference here today. Looking ahead to day 3, I'm actually really honored and humbled to be speaking before Richard Rothstein, whose work I have come to admire. I'm looking forward to hearing his remarks in just a short while. I would be remiss if I didn't put a plug in for 2 other sessions coming your way later today from my colleagues at CHFA, the QAP, as Kylie mentioned earlier, and closing out the conference in affordable home ownership, equitable home buying system, and how to build that and address the racial wealth gap. In many ways, these 2 sessions are kind of bookends. They embody the past year at CHFA, both the process of developing the QAP, as many of you are familiar with, our work this past year and our approach to promoting and financing first-time home ownership rely on a complex network of partners and partnerships. And they both dictate how we would allocate critical and finite resources. Both require a deep understanding of who we're trying to serve. And even more fundamental, both the development of the QAP and how we think about the future of homeownership are intrinsically connected to two themes that are at the heart of this year's conference: opportunity and equity. We live in unprecedented times. I'm sure that's an understatement. Housing affordability is in Connecticut and elsewhere is being tested like any other time in our history. 2/3 of extremely low income renters, which is a family of 4 in Hartford who makes less than $30,000 a year, 2/3 of those renters pay more than 50% of their income on housing. That's just a staggering number. The burden is going to worsen. Inflation, rents are increasing by as much as 10%, and they're predicted to go up even more in the coming year. Upmarket housing supply shortages are putting severe pressures on naturally occurring affordable housing that's normally accessible for low and moderate income households. This trend was highlighted in a recent study co-sponsored by DOH and corroborated in a housing needs assessment that was completed in 2020 by CHFA. To compound matters, Connecticut is home to one of the oldest housing stock in the country, and much of that housing falls short of basic health and energy efficiency standards. Nearly 30% of Connecticut renters live in homes that are 80 years or older. That number is over 40% for renters in low opportunity and weak market communities. Then we have barriers to building affordable housing in well-resourced suburbs. And many towns are doing the right thing by welcoming affordable housing into their communities, but it is still an issue and a big impediment. It's made worse by rising construction costs, labor shortages. 80% of Connecticut's subsidized units are located in high poverty neighborhoods, which is a very staggering and impactful number when you think about it. On the homeownership front, wealth gaps between Black and white homeowners have been well documented. Homeownership is still the primary means for Americans to build intergenerational wealth. White families are nearly twice as likely to own their homes as Black families, a gap that is larger today than it was prior to the passage of the 1968 Fair Housing Act. The effect of generations being locked out of homeownership opportunities has resulted in the wealth held by Black families amounting to just 5% of that held by white households. Recent trends in Connecticut are putting tremendous pressure on all of these dynamics. 1 in 5 homes that would typically be affordably priced for moderate income home buyers is being purchased by investor owners and iBuyers, which is further delaying an entire generation from putting down roots and building wealth. And all of this is happening at a time when median home prices in Connecticut are at an all-time high, rising 14% in just 1 year. So we have a lot of challenges. They can be tracked back over decades. The reasons are complex. They're well understood in many cases. COVID has had a disparate impact, as we all know, and a reckoning with the widespread racial and social inequalities has magnified the need for immediate and meaningful action. What are we to do? How do we move forward through this moment in time? How do we find hope? And more importantly, how do we inspire hope in others? One thing has become clear in the last 20 months. We just can't do this work alone. For CHFA's part, strong, effective partnerships and thoughtful deployment of resources are the core of our strategy. Last year at the Tipping Point Conference, I spoke about our then new 3-year strategic plan. I really credit the commissioner, the leadership of our board and staff for including in this plan a focused commitment to expanding high quality housing choices for low and moderate income households, in both urban and non-urban areas as part of overall neighborhood revitalization efforts and as a means of reducing racial and economic segregation. The first year of the plan has been one of listening, experimenting, and learning. We've had dozens of one-on-one conversations, focus groups, surveys, hearings. We know that many of you share the same concerns about equity and opportunity. And thankfully, many of you have made suggestions on how we can be better partners together to find solutions. In the past year, in an effort to increase access to housing opportunity, we've expanded our multifamily programs to reach cities and towns across the state. In this morning's session, you'll learn that the QAP has evolved to incentivize development in communities that have historically been hostile to affordable housing. A network of advocates and policymakers, many of you who are here today, have helped create tools and resources to support the creation and preservation of rental housing. I want to emphasize the preservation aspect. According to the National Housing Preservation Database, affordability restrictions for over 13,000 units will expire by 2025. In response to this fact, and as a result of many conversations with many of you over the past year, the upcoming 9% round will feature a new category specifically aimed at preserving existing housing. To complement LIHTC investment in the coming year, we've developed an opportunity fund. I'm sure many of you are aware of it, to enable projects to get done that otherwise would not be done. It's meant to really provide resources that otherwise were not available, to create deep targeted units for extremely low income families and individuals. We've also received the first ever Connecticut award from the Treasury's Capital Magnet Fund to promote affordable housing in both urban and rural areas of economic distress. We're using that fund today actively as we speak in deals where we're working with the Department of Housing on the multifamily side. So we're able to really bring more resources to bear to help families and households whose rent burden is most severe. There's no question that COVID-19 has changed the way we work. We recognize that many of you who are working on the front lines have been at the mercy of supply chain issues, pandemic-induced construction delays, labor shortages across the trades. We're going to be looking at streamlining with DOH efficiencies meant to expedite the underwriting, review process, the closing process, so we can get units approved and closed and online faster. These process improvements are not only meant to reduce wait times for developers, but demonstrate to our fellow housing funders and partners that the state of Connecticut is committed to being a flexible and responsive partner. Much of the focus of this conference has been on rental housing, and for good reason. But you'll learn later today that equitable, affordable homeownership is needed now more than ever. There's strong interest from millennials to purchase homes, but market forces and ballooning debt have made this nearly impossible. More than 250,000 Connecticut residents would have student loan debt that's at least $35,000, and they're all at or around the age of 35, the average home buying age for CHFA loans. A recent study by Zillow found that the average renter in Connecticut would need to save for 9 years in order to afford a down payment for a modestly priced home. Of course, this is where CHFA's down payment assistance programs come in. But even then, there are gaps and unintended consequences to these programs that we need to consider as we move forward. For our part, we're examining our down payment assistance, our first mortgage programs, to ensure how we can modify them to become the engine for equitable homeownership that it was intended to be. We have convened a cross-sector group of stakeholders to better articulate our strategic objectives so we can support those objectives with programming, with policy changes, with other types of outreach that is needed in order to really bring resources to communities that have been impacted by decades of disinvestment. We're hopeful that through our work, we can reduce socioeconomic segregation relating to homeownership, and supporting first-generation home buyers buy their first home through CHFA's programs and counseling. But just as CHFA relies on its partners to create and preserve affordable housing, so too will we need to look to new partners to meet the emerging demand for affordable home ownership in the coming years, which includes our lending partners, many of you who have expressed a commitment to improve how you serve the communities that you work in, which also includes realtors who are often the front line and the first touch point in a person's home buying journey. I've mentioned a few times today the learning mindset. I just want to say that our ability to understand and communicate housing challenges is unprecedented. The research that's being produced today, much of it through our fellow conference presenters, including Mr. Rothstein, is staggering. The level of data, the access to firsthand accounts to housing insecurity is both outstanding and troubling. The frontline journalism that we've seen month after month that have brought these issues forward is first rate. In the past, we were forced to speak anecdotally, but now we have irrefutable evidence that stable, quality, affordable housing is linked to everything from maternal mental health, children's performance in schools, whether and how one interacts with the criminal justice system, access to healthy foods, exposure to trauma and violence. The list goes on and on. I'm grateful for all the work that's being done to shine light on just how critical housing is. I'm sorry, there's somebody in my house and they're talking kind of loudly, but earlier I referenced my speech from the Tipping Point Conference last year. I'm thinking about the work we've done in the last year, the future generations we're trying to help. It has me looking forward to next year. What are we going to look at next year and look back on for the work that we would have done in this next year and meet in the fall of 2022 to reconnect and look back at our collective work? So perhaps it's this. We know that housing doesn't exist in a vacuum or in a bubble. It's linked, it's intertwined with nearly every aspect of our lives. How we learn, how we grow, how we work, how we move about our communities, etc. Creating lasting change requires us to address decades of disinvestment in urban centers and create housing opportunities in suburban and rural towns. It will demand an all sectors in approach from leaders across industries we don't normally associate with housing, healthcare, higher education, manufacturing. So I challenge you to find leaders from those sectors in your communities that might benefit from more affordable housing, be it rental or homeownership. Bring them onto your teams. Tell them your stories. Show them the work you've done and the work that's left to be done. Tell them why investing in housing matters for everybody and tell them how they can help you. Many thanks for your time this morning. Thank you to the partnership for this opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you, Nandini. That was great. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your willingness to think broadly at this time in history. As you outlined, it's a moment for us to really think about real change, and we really appreciate you being at the forefront of that. So thank you. And as Nandini mentioned, we are going to be transitioning to our keynote speaker, Richard Rothstein, at 10. Please note that that is at a separate link. The link is in the chat. It is also on the website, the conference website and the conference lobby. If you are having challenges and you can't find the link, go to pschousing.org and click on the conference website. It is there. Also a reminder that we have an iForum coming up on December 16th, a save the date that is focusing on the practices and policies that have created racial inequities in housing and highlight best practices to support organizations in creating a culture that embeds racial equity at its center. We have some great speakers lined up for that, so stay tuned. Following Richard Rothstein's speech, we will be doing a session on the qualified allocation plan. And as Nandini mentioned, we have a series of other great sessions today focused on zoning and equitable home buying. So please tune into those. You can access them all through your regular conference registration. But for now, I encourage you all to hop over to that other link and join us for Richard Rothstein. A big thank you again to the Commissioner and to Nandini for joining us today and sharing their visions.